conversation. All right, let's take a moment to center ourselves and just acknowledge the presence and the power that is God. The everywhere evenly present spirit of absolute good. We thank you, Spirit, for growth, for expansion. Our intention is to release that imprisoned splendor within. Our intention is to be what you created us to be. We ask that this conversation that we have tonight around spiritual principle serve that purpose. Let all things be in service to you, in the name and in the nature of the one that we call the Christ. This prayer is so, and so it is. And amen. Okay, wonderful. So a couple of housekeeping things this weekend for Up Church. Yes, this will air before that. We have our party in the park. And so if you are in the Los Angeles area, I want to encourage you to come hang out with us and have a party in the park. We'll be at Blair Hills Park in Culver City from noon to 4. There's food, there's games, fun, bingo, spades, dominoes, everything. This is a party in the park. The second thing is that there is an online component. Miss Glenda is one of the team members for that. Do you want to say anything about that, Glenda? The Global Connections Ministry? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Here I am. I'm sorry. I was resending the email to Dr. Brenda. Good evening, everyone. And so if any of you are interested in attending our event on Saturday, it is going to be from 1 to 3 Pacific time. And all I would need for you to do is to email connections with an S at upchurch.org. Again, that's connections with an S at upchurch.org. We are going to have a wonderful event on Saturday. We're going to tell you about the new Global Connections Ministry because we're literally around the globe. And then we're going to unite with the people in the park. And then after that, we've got games, spiritual chats, prizes, and all you have to do is bring your food, your beverage, wherever you are, sign into Zoom, and we're going to have a great time. So we really encourage any of our guests that are a part of Metaphysical Bible Hangouts, or anybody that you know that you want to introduce to New Thought Principles and you want to kind of do it in a fun way, this would be a good thing for them to attend. So connections at upchurch.org. Thanks, Reverend. Appreciate it.
Yes, is somebody else? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay. Let's see, is there anything else? I think that's it. Let's get into this conversation. So I wanted to move forward to Proverbs 4, but I realized I had one more piece that I needed to share with you because I feel like it will help with understanding the value and the power of metaphysics and why as metaphysical Christians, it helps us to embrace the Bible. It helps us to dig into that text without running into some of the roadblocks that others may run into. So yes, so that's it. So just by way of review, I just want to go back over the principles that we talked about and make sure that we're clear on them. And so the first one is the omnipresence of God. There is but one presence and one power in the universe. Let me try to make this bigger. Oh, no, it's much bigger. Okay, there is but one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, omnipotent, the everywhere evenly present spirit of absolute good. So whenever we're looking at a story, we're always looking at it through the lens that God is the only power that there is. So even when we read a story like the story of Jesus in the wilderness with the temptations, we are not looking at this character called Satan or the devil or whatever as some opposing power to God. There is one presence, one power in the universe, God the good, omnipotent, the everywhere, evenly present spirit of absolute good. So this is a worldview. I know that that often you'll have people who will say, oh, you know, that minister at such and such megachurch, you know, he's New Thought because his language sounds similar. But I want you to get that the world view of looking at the world through the lens of God only is a very specific lens. It is not the same thing as our some of our favorite people who read our work and then adapt it to their teachings. So just so that that's clear, that and I don't want to call any names because many of them I like a lot, and I don't want to, this is not to denigrate anybody. This is to help make a distinction so that you get that when you're looking at so-and-so from whatever mega church on the corner of whatever and whatever, that you're not thinking that it's the same. It's a world view. It's what's the lens that you're coming at the world with. Do you see this universe as a friendly universe? And I would argue that if you see the universe as having an opposing power, one for good and one for bad, then perhaps you don't really see this universe as a friendly universe. So there is but one presence, one power in the universe, God the good, omnipotent, the everywhere, evenly present spirit of absolute good. God is all there is. God is all there's ever been. God is all there ever will be. There is no such thing as hell as a physical destination. Neither is there such thing as heaven as a physical destination. That these are states and stages of consciousness that we enfold in. And you can take one person and they will make a heaven of hell, and you'll take another person and they will make a hell of heaven, because it's what's happening right here that determines what the experience is. Any questions on that? Anything that doesn't sit right? And please, there are no wrong questions. If this is an area of growing edge for you, let's grow together.
One question.
Yes.
In regards to the scripture you were quoting about Jesus,
The will.
how do you explain how you see that through
Sure.
the one power?
Sure. So we will, if you just hold that, I think I'm going to get to the answer to your question in this piece I want to share tonight. Okay. So the second piece is the divinity of humankind, that we are from God, we are like God, we are God in expression. Pass over. We are God in expression. So it is, think of it as the drop in the ocean, that you can pull the drop out of the ocean, and in its constituent parts, it is the same as the ocean. Now, no one would mistake the drop for the ocean, but there is the recognition that it is just like the ocean, it differing only in degree. And so I want you to think of the divinity of humankind in that way. So when we say that we are gods, in agreement with Jesus's claim, does not your own scripture say that you are gods? That the claim is not God in the sense of all there is. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. The claim is in the sense that just like the drop from the ocean has the same constituent parts, same thing. And the drop by itself is not that powerful singly, but the drop combined with the ocean can level an entire town, can bring a whole side of a whole island under the sea. So us married with the power and the presence of God, we are an unstoppable force. Us operating by ourselves, operating in our own power, not too much can be done. The value and the power of thought. It is through, let me stop right there. Any questions on that? The value and power of thought. It is through thinking that we form that which we have in our lives. It is through thinking that we form that which we have in our lives. Well, we just talked about that. You can make a heaven of hell, you can make a hell of heaven. That it is that your thinking determines what the experience is for you. Science tells us this. They know that those that are studying the brain, one of the most exciting revelations coming out, and there are many coming out of the study of the brain, is that the area of the brain that lights up when you are anxious and feeling fear is also, I should say anxious, but it's definitely feeling fear. When you're feeling fear is also the same area of the brain that lights up when you're feeling excitement. And so one of the hacks that you can do to manage fear is to tell yourself that it is excitement. And so they do this with public speakers, that before they go on, that anxiety that they might be feeling, that apprehension that they might be feeling, that instead of saying, oh, I'm nervous, or oh, I'm worried, or oh, I'm concerned, or I feel fear, what they train themselves to say is, this is excitement for what's about to happen. And it helps them to pass through it. That's just a small piece in terms of what we have the ability to do. Experience has no meaning until we say what experience means. And so it is through thinking that we form that which we have in our lives. Any questions on that? The fourth principle is practicing the presence of God. So we are taught to abide in the presence of God through visioning, solitude, prayer, and meditation. In other words, what's the combination of these things? I would add in there journaling, chanting, other spiritual practices, and I'm sure that you guys have several of them that you've engaged in over the course of your lifetime. What is that combination that is your combination to get the best you out into expression? You are locked within you is unlimited potential. It has no form save for the forms that you've given it thus far in your experience. But what has the ability to come out of you is greater than anything that we have seen in history. What is meant to come out of you into expression is meant to have lasting value beyond your lifetime. We, in these bodies, are temporal beings in these bodies. Eventually we will shed this body, but the things that we create last, stick, continue. All of us are above a certain age, not calling anybody out in particular. So to that end, each of us has someone whose music we love, and we keep playing that music. They have since left the planet. They might not have been here for 40, 50 years. But you put on that, a change is gonna come. I was born, I don't even know the lyrics, but y'all know, right?
Yes.
Somebody knows lyrics, help me. So, go ahead, Earlene.
Sam Cooke.
I was born by the river.
I was born by the river. But my point being is that the things that we were brought here to do last long beyond our physical lifetimes. And your greatest joy will come through the discovery of what that is and the diligent pursuit of its release into expression. It's You haven't lived until you found something you're willing to die for.
Well, no.
Okay, that's what I'm talking, like something that you're willing to stake your life on. That's when life becomes rich. And so prayer, visioning, solitude, meditation, journaling, chanting, all of those spiritual practices, plus the ones hundreds I probably haven't even named, are all for the purpose of releasing that into expression, for you to practice the presence of God so that you may release the presence of God. Finally, the law of demonstration. The law of demonstration is that like begets like, that what you hold in mind must express in the body. That the moment that you think it, the God in you becomes a vibrational equivalent of it. And the more that you think it, the more that you become a match for what's already been created. And so the law of demonstration as a principle is that if you hold it, even if it does not exist, you holding it will set in motion the machinery of the universe so that it comes to pass simply because you decided. Simply because you decided. That's the power that you have. So that's the spiritual principle. Those are the what we call the 5 basic spiritual principles. They are guiding principles. But I want to deal now with story. So since you brought up the story of the wilderness, we'll go right there. Let's start with, we'll go to the one, Matthew 4, 1 through 11. All right. So with this story, chapter 4, verses 1 through 11, then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I will give you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and angels came and attended him. So when we are looking at scripture from a metaphysical lens, we are not looking at this as individual entities interacting. Every element of this story is some aspect of you. So the Jesus character in the story is you, but also the devil character in the story is you. The weakness from fasting is an aspect of your character, as is the temptation to have a show of power. That every aspect of the story is an aspect of you. And so what you are looking at is the revelation of the mysteries of being. It is Origen, one of the church fathers, not New Thought in any sense, although we count him as an antecedent to New Thought, but he was one of the Catholic church fathers, Origen, Origen. Origen said the Bible is threefold, that as literally, taken literally, it is a book of history. As taken mentally, it is a book of morals, of laws of how we handle each other. And spiritually, it is a book that reveals the mysteries of being. So when we're looking at this story from a metaphysical lens, we are looking for revelation on the mystery of being. So the Jesus character represents the I am of our nature. The devil character represents the part of us that does not yet believe in our divine nature. There's a part of you that knows that I'm so much more than I see here between my head and my feet. And there's a part of you that is painfully aware of your human limitations. There's a book that I'm reading right now called, I think I mentioned it, called Alter Ego by Todd Herman. Powerful book. Because what it talks about is assuming an alter ego to do the hard things of life, so that it's not you doing it, it's your alter ego going in and doing it. So let me give you an example. Sasha Fierce with Beyonce. Here's something. Martin Luther King never needed glasses. He wore glasses, true story, wore glasses because that was part of his alter ego. That when you have to do the hard things of life, you have to face up to the part of you that doesn't fully believe in who you are, who you really are. And so that persona, so that the devil represents that persona, that element in the character that does not yet believe in your ability to do the extraordinary things that are yours to do. The fasting consciousness, the consciousness that has gone without, that feels depleted, that feels tired, that you're tempted to use your power for your own good. The power that you have is not simply to bless you. The power that you have is to make life better for other people. And you are blessed in the process of making life better for other people. So let me stop right there. So Stacy, does that answer your question? And if it raised another one, go ahead and ask.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the things to get with New Thought is that, and specifically New Thought Christianity, is that our faith is not built on the inerrancy of the Bible. So you will hear people say they believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God.
Mm-hmm.
But we know with clarity that there were mistakes, missteps,
Mm-hmm.
some intentional, some unintentional.
Yes.
And so as a New Thought Christian, we don't run away from that. My faith was never built on this being accurate without error. My faith is built on that spiritual principle that doesn't need it to be perfect and infallible. And so you can come with a ton of evidence. Well, the letters of Paul all weren't written by Paul. Okay. I was never going into it from the perspective that they needed to all be written by Paul. The stories, the what they call the myths of the Bible. I know that word freaks a lot of people out, but it's okay. The myths of the Bible. So the story of the Garden of Eden, the creation of man, the Tower of Babel, Noah and the flood, all those stories, Jacob, the patriarchs, Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, all of those stories predate the Bible and have been found in earlier literature that have nothing to do with the Near Eastern culture that produced the Bible. Okay. I didn't go into it. I'm not coming at it needing it to be true, because the truth, the spiritual truth is there whether the story happened or not. The other thing that's important to know about Near Eastern culture, and I think we'll get this culturally, is that it is prone to exaggeration. The point was to get the point across, not to relate the story exactly as it happened. So it could have been 5,000, but it could have been, that party you had at your house where you invited 10 people, but 50 showed up. And you're like, how am I going to stretch this food to all these people? Like, it's that kind of storytelling. Remember, these were oral stories that were passed down for centuries before they were put in written form. And so the stories have evolved over time. Think about the stories that you told when you were growing up and how fantastic they became. And so you were trying to get the point across, and not that you were intending to lie. You didn't go into it with the intention to lie, but you were trying to get a point across of how absurd it was, or how extraordinary it was, or how you were trying to communicate. And what we're saying with metaphysics is that metaphysics doesn't need the story to be historically accurate for it to be spiritually useful. Robin.
So how did it come to be that the Bible, how did it come to be that the Bible is a source of spiritual knowledge and guidance? Like, there's so many other texts. Like, how is that determined or evaluated, or you know what I'm saying?
I think I do. I think I do. Can you say a little bit more?
Mm-hmm. I'm saying that because what you're saying is that, this was oral stories passed down through the years. They were gathered up, and they've been built over the years, the Old Testament and then the New Testament and all of that.
Sure.
Is all bound together. Okay. Out of all the other texts and different things in the world, how that have been written throughout the years. Sure. How did we identify that the Bible is the one that carries so much knowledge and insight?
Sure. So, okay, so that's a great question. So there is a great series that I believe is on Amazon, I think. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it. And it's a PBS series, and it's called Empires of the World. And it follows the Israelites. And so that'll give you a very broad strokes overview of how the book itself came about. But the short version is that these stories were passed. So let me back up. So the Israelites form as a nation under David. And this is why David had such a, they call David the apple of God's eye, right? The David is the, he was, a son of God. And he has that hype because it was under his leadership after the death of King Saul that the nation united under one king. Before that, they were bickering. They were bickering among themselves, fighting, warring factions. Sometimes they got along, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they colluded against one another with another tribe. And so under David, he unites those 12 tribes of Israel. his son Solomon succeeds him. And one of the things that is significant about Saul is that Saul goes on a major building spree. Solomon. Solomon, under his leadership, the temple is built. But it was a very difficult undertaking financially for the people. And they were required to make tribute to basically build the temple. The other thing that happened, I believe this is under Solomon, is that you had the creation of what we would call today cities. And so there was then stratification in terms of wealth, meaning there became rich and there became obvious rich and obvious poor, stratification. And so when Solomon died and his son Rehoboam ascended to the throne, the people came to him and said, look, we can't continue like this. What your dad had us doing was backbreaking. And instead of listening to the people, Rehoboam doubled down on the building projects like you ain't seen nothing yet. And led by Jeroboam, I'm giving these names, but I have worked with these stories so much they're in here now. Led by Jeroboam, the 10 northern tribes break off and form their own nation, and they retain the name Israel. And so in academic circles, it's known as like the Northern Kingdom. In the South, the two tribes that remain are Judah and Benjamin, and they hold the name, oh my God, Judah, Southern Kingdom. So Israel and Judah. I think I got that right. Oh my God, I hope I didn't get that wrong. But the Southern tribes. And so now they're divided again under David's grandson, Rehoboam. And so you got the Northern tribe, Israel, and the Southern tribe, Judah. Now, mind you, there's some geopolitical things that are happening. There are other nations that are rising while all this infighting inside of Israel is happening. And one of those superpowers is Assyria. And Assyria attacks. And one of my teachers, Reverend Mary, taught me that you always know a nation by the way that it conquers. One of the things that the Assyrians would do when they would conquer a nation is that they would go in and they would remove the people and they would resettle them somewhere else. And then they would resettle other people in their lands. And so that they could never come back and rebuild. So what happens when Assyria takes down Israel is that they go in and remove fully 90%, if not more, of the people out, but enough that they can't rebuild. They resettle them somewhere else and they bring in other people and settle them. The capital of Israel was Samaria. So you get a lot of mixed race intermixing that's happening, which is why there's such a negative view of the Samaritans, right? And so Jesus is being subversive when he tells a story of the Good Samaritan, because the idea is what good could come out of that? You got these mixed race mongrels, okay? So Israel falls. And so this is why we talk about the lost tribes of Israel, the 10 lost tribes. They're lost to the pages of history. They never regathered in any way that historians can point to. So as far as time is concerned, we don't know what happened to that group of people that was resettled. The Southern Kingdom, Judah, stands for another 150 years. Assyria eventually overextends itself and implodes. And Persia comes in and, Babylon comes in and conquers them and takes over. And Babylon then conquers Judah. You always know a people by the way that they conquer. Babylon's method for Babylonia for conquering was different. What they did is that they would come in and pull off the talent out of the country and relocate them and put them to work in service to the government. And so you get your stories like Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, Abednego. These were the heroes of the faith who, even though they were working in service to the Babylonian government, they maintained their faith. And remember, the faith practice, there are many of them, but one of them was those dietary laws, the circumcision, and there are other things, whatever. And so if you remember, like what happens with, and what you worship, who you worship, right? And so what happens with Daniel, it was about what he was eating, because he was being true to the tradition. He was maintaining the faith. So even though he was working in service of the Babylonian government, he was keeping his faith. All that to say, Persia ends up conquering Babylon, and the Persians are different. They allow the Israelites to go back and rebuild. That period of time is what is known as the exile. And the books of the Bible that we study, fully the majority of them were written during that exile. That what made this nation of people unique is that they decided to write down their history. And so these stories that we read in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and so forth, they were not written in real time. They were written hundreds of years after they supposedly happened. But they made this decision to capture their history, and they became the people of the book. That's how they were referred to. And so these stories written down then became circulated, and they became the connecting link between them and united them as a people. So even though they didn't have their own land, they united around this idea. And that was extremely unique, because in that time, you worship the God of the land that you're in. If we had time, I would show you these kinds of things in the Bible, that the land that you're in, clearly your God wasn't good enough. So you worship the land of the God that you go to. So these Israelites made a very definite choice to continue to worship the God of their understanding. That was a big deal, because gods were local. And they continued this. And what arose in the literature, in the mindset of that ancient Hebrew, is this idea that God is going to intervene in the course of history. God is going to send a Messiah that is going to right this wrong, that is going to restore Israel to her rightful place. So when you are reading the prophets, almost every story of the prophet is all built around, hey, get this together so that God can do what God's going to do. Serve God. Don't turn away from God. Go back to God. Why? Because the practice is that where you live is the God that you worship. No, it's not Empress, Alita. She asked me about the series. I'll try to look it up while we go. But they go over like the Egyptians. They go over the Medici Medicis. It's a whole thing that PBS did. Maybe it was Great Civilizations of the World.
It's just called Empires. I looked it up.
It's just called Empires. Okay, great.
Empires.
Okay, all right. Yep. Okay. Oh, she said it autocorrected. Got it. Yeah. So that series is very compelling. Keith David narrates it. It's wonderful. But what it'll do is it'll give you an overview of like what happened. So these stories are passed down and shared. And they don't get to the form that we think of with the 66 books until we get to the printing press. Because that was a time when somebody had to say this stays and this goes. But you had communities that were studying lots of books that didn't make it what we call into the canon. And many of them were lost for centuries, meaning specifically what we think of now as the hidden, not even the Apocrypha, the hidden Gospels. So the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, the infancy Gospels, the secret Gospel of Mark. A lot of those books were lost for centuries. We knew that they existed because there was writing from church fathers like Irenaeus and others that were writing polemics against those books. explaining why they were heretical. So we always knew that, well, they tell you this in seminary. I don't know why they don't come out and teach it to the people. In my mind, they should come teach it to the people. So that we always knew that these books existed, but we had never seen them. And then in 1945, they discover in a cave in Egypt. Y'all know where Egypt is, right? They discover in a cave in Egypt what is now known as the Nag Hammadi Library. And there are the copies of the books. And let me give you one more piece just because we're on this topic. The Gospel of Mary is written in a Coptic tongue, which is an Ethiopian language.
Okay.
It's
My mouth is on the
somebody
floor.
can take your history, turn it around, make you think they gave it to you. Mm-hmm. Yes, Wanda. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Reverend Mary always said we gotta get to Egypt. We gotta get to Alexandria because the history is in there, the Library of Alexandria. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but these stories have just been passed down over time. People have fought wars. People have been beaten up by the people of the book. And you had the Inquisition. If you didn't believe, there's a priest. I wish I could remember his name. I'm not going to remember right now, but because I can't even remember how I stumbled on him. But he started speaking about God being more than just a God in the sky, and they killed him quickly.
No.
So,
But but how was the metaphysics in the Bible? Like, how was that discovered?
sure.
Like,
So,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
how
So
is
that's not new. So there's metaphysical interpretation in the Bible itself. So let me go to Galatians 4. Yeah, Galatians 4. So metaphysical interpretation is not new on any stretch. So the gist of metaphysical interpretation is that everything in the story represents an element of yourself. And when you're watching the interaction of the elements in the story, what it's giving you is information about yourself. So if you go to Galatians 4, this is, hold on. So this is Paul. Tell me, you who want to be under the law. So let me back up. Paul, if you remember, or if you don't know his story, one of the things about Paul is that he always went to the Jews first, and then he went to the Gentiles or the pagans, right? That was his method. I'm gonna go to my people first. If they don't take it, I'm gonna go to the pagans or the Gentiles, basically the people who are not born of the children of Israel. And so this argument that he's putting forth is, how is it that you, a Gentile, who genetically you are not a Hebrew, how is it that you can be considered a child of the promise? And Isaac is the child of the promise, and Ishmael is the bastard child, as far as the story is concerned. Okay. So he's giving an argument to these Gentiles for how it is that they can be considered children of the promise. Tell me, you who want to be under the law, are you not aware of what the law says? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by the slave woman and the other by the free woman. His son by the slave woman was born according to the flesh, but his son by the free woman was born as the result of a divine promise. These things are taken figuratively. Other places it never says metaphysically, but other places it says metaphorically. Think of synonyms for figuratively. The women represent two covenants. One covenant is from Mount Sinai and bears children who are to be slaves. This is Hagar. Now, Hagar stands for Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present city of Jerusalem because she is in slavery with her children. But Jerusalem that is above and free, and she is our mother. For it is written, be glad, barren woman, you who never bore a child. Shout for joy and cry aloud, you who were never in labor, because more are the children of the desolate woman than of her who has a husband. Now you, brothers and sisters, like Isaac, are children of promise. At that time, so in other versions it says of the promise. At that time, the son born according to the flesh persecuted the son born by the power of the Spirit. He's saying that Ishmael is the one born according to the flesh, and Isaac is the one born by the power of the Spirit. But what does Scripture say? Get rid of the slave woman and her son, for the slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with the free woman's son. Therefore, brothers and sisters, we are not children of the slave woman, but of the free woman. So the whole point of this that I want you to get is that the only way to buy Paul's argument that they are children of the promise is you got to agree to his metaphysical interpretation of the story. He is saying that the reason that you can consider yourself a child of the promise, meaning that you inherit the good of God, is that you got to buy into this metaphysical argument. Metaphysical interpretation, I don't know that I can tell you like exactly where it comes from, but I can tell you that it is as old as the Bible itself. It is the idea of taking a story and you're looking at it to reveal a hidden meaning in the story. It's not obvious on the surface. On the surface, it's just the story of Hagar and Sarah and Isaac and Ishmael. But when you dig deeper and you begin to look at what each thing means, because which is what he did, right? That this is exactly what we do with metaphysical interpretation. Hold on, I shared the wrong thing. This part here. The women represent two covenants, right? When we're doing metaphysical interpretation, the first thing we do is we say, what does this mean and what does that mean? Right? One covenant, the two women represent two covenants. So you're not really looking at a story of two women. What you're looking at are two agreements. One agreement is from Mount Sinai and bears children who are to be slaves. This is Hagar. Now, Hagar stands for Mount Sinai. This is what we say, right? Jesus stands for the I am. The devil in the story of the wilderness from before stands for the consciousness that does not yet believe in the divine power of humanity, right? And now Hagar stands for that and corresponds to the present city of Jerusalem because she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem that is above, right, the free Jerusalem, the Jerusalem that God is going to intervene in the course of history and set things right, she is our mother. The only way to buy his argument and to agree with what he's saying is that you got to buy his metaphysical interpretation. Shamika, you said, would you also consider Christ parables as examples of metaphysical interpretations in the Bible? A little bit. So the thing about, yes, to a degree, yes, I could say that to a degree, but what we're looking at when we're seeing metaphysical interpretation, it's always the interaction of one aspect of yourself with another aspect of yourself. It's helping you're letting go of needing there to have been a Hagar or there to have been a Sarah, right? We're letting that go. What we're looking at is that there's an aspect of me that's Hagar, there's an aspect of me that's Sarah. And how do these two interplay with one another? Because something about their interplay, their interworking together, tells me about who I am and how I operate. Constance says, from Basic Truth 1, we learn about a group of 17. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Mhm. Mhm. To me, this is powerful stuff. I can talk about this all night. So, particularly because it gave me a love of the Bible. And I no longer had to put my head in the trunk and act like the things that were discrepancies were not there. I didn't have to rationalize them away. So now when we're looking at a story like Abraham, which we have no historical evidence for Abraham, and the story predates the Bible. When we're looking at a story like Abraham and a God figure, character, tells Abraham he's got to sacrifice his only biological son, I'm not running into a debate with myself about a God that would tell you to kill your child. What I am knowing is that this is that the God in the story is an aspect of me. Abraham in the story is an aspect of me. Isaac in the story is an aspect of me, and the ram. And how do those things interact with one another to reveal to me something about myself and how I operate, or how I am supposed to operate?
I have a question.
Go ahead. Yes.
So what's the fate of the negative personalities, of the negative characters? For example, the Judases and them, do they get eliminated somehow or corrected?
Sure.
Or do they just stay like that?
So one of the principles of the universe is that energy is neither created nor destroyed.
Yeah.
So, and I haven't read this somewhere, but I know that that's how our universe works. So my interpretation of those aspects of our personality is that they become enlightened in us, and the purpose that they served ends, and so they then can end in their expression. Let me say it a little bit clearer. The person, said when I was a child, I behaved as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. Mm-hmm. There are choices that we made at points in our lives when it was the best choice that we knew how to make. And when we have better information, we can make better choices.
Okay. Like a deactivated gene.
Yes. But remember, energy is neither created nor destroyed, so nothing is ever gone. It's only transmuted. And so I don't believe that we're here to get rid of the ego so much as we're here to spiritualize the ego. Because you need the ego. The ego is necessary.
Well, I've thought about this, but then I always arrive to this question. Why is the fate of the devil then? Why isn't he also subject to some form of correction? Why is it like, is it that, I don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying? Why is his fate?
Keep talking. No, I'm trying to follow you. Keep going.
Yeah, I've thought about the negative aspects, okay, being corrected or being transmuted. But then I always arrive at the question of the devil himself, the origin of evil. Like what's going, yeah.
So I can address that a little bit more fully. There's a text that I want to pull called Alternatives, and I don't think I have it down here. I think I have it upstairs in my room. The idea of a devil as an entity is a later creation.
Okay.
One of the things that we don't have the ability to see, and partly because we just haven't been educated in this way, is what we don't have the ability to see is how understanding evolved over time. So this understanding of a devil, of an entity that, you know, operates on its own, all of that, that's a later construct that was not a part of the Hebrew tradition that produced the text. And so the way that we think of a devil in the 21st century or 20th century, hopefully we let it go in the 21st century, how we think of a devil is not the same as what those ancient communities meant when they talk about a devil. And their idea of a devil is much more in alignment with an aspect of our being rather than as this independent entity making you do stuff.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question. That's the point of that I'm asking the question from that aspect of our being. If it does exist, why is its fate decided? Why isn't it also subject to some form of correction?
But it is.
I feel like this is a very sensitive question because
No. I think this is a great question, but I think it is. Listen, I'll use myself as an example. I recently got some information about the healthy way, I was about to say right, but the healthy way to take care of my body that promotes health. But there was an error consciousness that up until I got that piece of information that thought that I could eat what I want, when I want, however much I want. Until I got enlightened. Once I got enlightened, that aspect of my consciousness that wanted to eat what I want, when I want, however much I want, was running rampant. It wasn't a way, it wasn't tying actions to the consequences.
it does run rampant.
Right. And so now that I've gotten some enlightenment, that aspect of the consciousness no longer has a leg to stand on. And so I would say that that is the case in every area of our lives and in our society.
I think I get it. Just get enough light in there so there's no more place for the devil to stand.
Shine the light. Shine the light. Alita said, thank you, Alita. This is from the Revealing Word. The devil is a state of consciousness adverse to the divine good. I got a loud outdoor area. The devil is a state of consciousness adverse to the divine good. That's the devil right there. Adverse to the divine good, meaning that there is good for you, but you have to be in agreement with it. You got to line up with it. Here, this is something I was giving. You people think you lose weight to get healthy, but actually you get healthy to lose weight. Sounds like doublespeak, but hear it. People think that you lose weight to get healthy, but the truth is that you get healthy to lose weight. Because on a healthy body, weight cannot stick. My point being that it's that what allows the habits to stick is an aspect of the consciousness that has not been enlightened. And you can apply that everywhere in your experience, from your health to your wealth to your happiness.
Can I give you one more example of
Please.
what you were saying?
Yes.
One of my friends, Tim Morrow, he used to always say, growing old does not make you sick. It's growing sick that makes you old.
Yes. Yes.
So it's all consciousness
Yes.
and what you do to yourself.
In what you do to yourself. Amen. That's it. Questions. I hope this was helpful. Hope this was helpful. But I wanted to get that point across because what I would like to see is I would like to see more metaphysical Christians embracing the Bible rather than running away from the Bible. And what you will find, and this is why I'm excited about what we do in UFBL, what you will find is that depending on the New Thought Church and the sensibility of the spiritual leader, there really is not an adherence to or a commitment to teaching from the Bible.
Question.
Yes.
Where does the level of vibration take place in all of this, the metaphysic part? The different frequencies.
Sure.
Where does that take place? Does the stories put you on different frequencies or vibrations to allow these things to come or go or what have you?
So I don't know that I ever hear people using that language in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you that you are what you eat.
Okay.
And you are what you eat, whether we're talking about food or words or entertainment or whatever. And so whatever it is that you study, you take on the shape of it.
Okay.
That
Okay.
it gets incorporated into you. And so the scriptures are sacred in the sense that as you consume them, as you eat them, as you dig into them, they change you. And I said this when we first started the metaphysical interpretation. So I don't know if you saw any of those or not, but we don't come to scripture to confirm bias.
Right.
We come to scripture to be changed at depth.
Yes.
If I were already who I was supposed to be, I would already have demonstrated what I'm supposed to demonstrate. The fact that it's not here is proof positive that I ain't done.
Yes.
It's proof positive that there is more changing that must be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm coming to the scriptures, I'm always, to the best of my ability, coming with an attitude of surrender. Because I desire to be changed. I desire to be stripped of my prejudices. I desire to be stripped of my current level of belief and to become open to a higher way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I have to put this out there just because this is so important. And I've talked about my own, but I want to talk about it from the perspective of you need one. A daily routine, and preferably in the morning. Reverend Sherri will let you off the hook and tell you can do it at night. I'm gonna call. Wow. I call BS. Okay. I want to tell you, you need to do it every day, and every day before you start your day.
Wow.
So let me give you what that looks like, or why that's important. So we are thinkers, and it is estimated that the average person thinks between 40,000 and 80,000 thoughts per day. Now, depending on the researcher, that number fluctuates in between there. The average man speaks about 13,000 words per day. The average woman speaks, this is so sad, about 20,000 words per day. I don't know why that's the case, but that's what the researchers say. I think they're prejudiced. That's just me. My point is that by the end of your day, you have planted some kind of garden. Every day you start out, let's go on the high side, 80,000 seeds, right? I think of these as seed thoughts. 80,000 seed thoughts. And you know, the word quickens, right? The word quickens the thought. So if 80,000, and let's go with the 20, so that's a fourth. So we speak 80,000, I mean, we have 80,000 thoughts. We speak about a quarter of them, right? A fourth of them. The point is that by the end of the day, you have planted a garden. I don't think you can afford to wait until the nighttime. That's just real talk. I don't think you can afford to wait until nighttime. Because everybody doesn't wake up in their right mind. Have you ever awakened and had something pressing and you woke up with it on your mind? Well, your right mind is your God mind, not your worried mind. Your right mind is your mind that is believing in, operating in that space of all possibility. And I don't always wake up in my right mind. Sometimes I wake up very present to what has to happen at the top of this morning was an example of that, because we record all our stuff on Thursday so that we can give it to the editor for Sunday. So I was up at 4 a.m. to record my sermon. So I didn't wake up in my right mind. I woke up thinking about, okay, I got to get this done. I got to get the recording right or whatever. At the end of the day, you've planted some kind of garden. So that's why I differ from Reverend Sherri, whom I love dearly, but y'all need to do this in the morning. And from my perspective, the reason that you're doing it is that you're programming yourself so that when the seeds get planted, what goes in the ground goes into good soil. Girl, yeah, turn your camera on.
It's life-changing. It's absolutely life-changing.
Yes. Yes. Hold on, Lita says, no, it's night for the morning so you can wake up. All right, so be it. I'm not gonna argue. I'm gonna let you have it the way you want it. I'm gonna give you my opinion, but I agree. So the truth is that I believe you should have a morning routine, and I believe you should have a night routine as well. That there should be a way that you bring down your day so that you are not going to bed with messed up energy, funky energy.
Yeah, I agree. You should do it how it works for you. But see, that's how I was taught. I was taught before I went to bed to think about my day.
Yeah.
And see where, went sideways.
Yeah.
And for that, and Course in Miracles tells you that too, that you're supposed to, not go to bed like that, And so then you plan, just like, your mama told you, before you go to bed, lay your clothes out.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
This is laying what I'm supposed to wear, what my mind is supposed to wear for the next day.
You know what, Alita,
that's what I was taught.
You are 100% correct. And so thank you for saying that, because now I want you to do both.
Hey, I have a something to say about that. I thought it was about those states of mind. Remember one time you once said about the hypno.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you want me to talk about that?
So that before you go to bed, yeah.
Yes. So before you go to bed and right after you wake up. So what we know from science is that, so here's the thing, the subconscious mind only works one way. So like this, right now, what we're doing, we're in the conscious mind. So the conscious mind can be educated this way, it can be enlightened this way. But what you're trying to get at is the deeper mind, the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is only educated one of two ways. That it's like a deep impression, like you have if you've ever had a traumatic event and then you were changed from that event. Anybody had something like that? Where something went down and then you were done. Okay. Yeah, there are people who they have one experience and they just stop smoking cold turkey, or right. Okay. So that's one way. The other way is repetition. And so what you want to do with the conscious mind, because the conscious mind is so dominant, is that you want those moments where the conscious mind is least active. And what we know from science is that the conscious mind is least active naturally right before you fall asleep and right after you wake up. And so you want to take advantage of those moments to speak to the subconscious mind and lay down an impression, because there's less interference from the conscious mind. Once you're fully awake, it's off to the races. It's just thinking.
Yeah, the inertia, you can't stop.
Right. And so there's a poem from Rumi that says, "Don't go back to sleep." It is one of my favorite. Rumi is just awesome. Just go read Rumi. Let me just offer that to you. This is what he says. He says, "The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep." Isn't that dope? Oh,
I like that. Yeah, heard that.
yes. I love Rumi. I think Rumi is like just, yeah, and Rumi is 17th century Sufi. But it's everything that he writes reads like today. Constance says, "I go to sleep with earphones with positive affirmations throughout my night and wake up with whisperings of I am starting my day." Yes. So I hope this helps. I wanted to just take this little pause and kind of just put a little bit more in there in the tank. And so next week, I promise, we will start with Proverbs chapter 4. So thank you so much for tonight. Is there anything else before we close out? Wonderful. Thank you. Have a beautiful.
Thank you. It was excellent.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.